Soulframe has a total of 9 overworld bosses, which are easy to fight if you have the right levels and pact equipped, and is fairly easy if you use the recruitment chat and invite another 2 more players. So in this video, we will go over the best route to take to get all bosses, and we will also go over their drops such as armor, weapons, and runes. So if you guys find this info at all insightful, please consider hitting the like and subscribe button, and we go over patch notes, updates, and pretty much everything to do with Soulframe. And now with that out the way, let's dive in. So we should start with the bottom left of the map with the Mendicant King, and work our way to the top to the boss called Gruul Seeker Ruthos. So the Mendicant King is a little bit more difficult, and I'd rank it in the mid to high difficulty of the bosses. So this boss is of the Mendicant race and wields the Purity Greatsword and wears the Mendicant King armor set. So this boss is an ancient Midrathian king of Old Curlail, and what we know of this boss is he and his knights perished during the Faunish Charge. We don't yet have the exact details of this, but it centers around a great battle, and from the depths of the Icor, the king and his knights now rise, and they are seeking to make Alka just as undead as them. So this boss drops the bassinet of the Mendicant King, Mendicant King's Sabatons, and Mendicant King's Suit of Rank, and also drops the rune called the Everflame. This rune is meant for greatswords and increases flame damage on activation and grants an additional attack totem slot. The next boss in the game is the Wraith of Wastes, which is here on the map. So before we continue, in order to get this world boss, you will need to have completed the fable titled The Waste Bear and have defeated the Waste Bear boss as part of the main questline. So we currently don't have much lore on this boss, but it's said to be a variant of the Wizard of Wastes, which is also of the Mendicant descent. This boss is more easier to defeat than the Mendicant King and drops the Erstroot Mage Staff and the Archstorm rune. This rune is for magics and flyblades that increases voltaic damage on activation and grants an additional defense totem slot. So not too far away from this boss is the Discharged Nimrod, who I would say is more difficult than the previous boss. But again, in a party of 3, all of these bosses are easy. So this boss is of the Ode class, who is sort of an advanced alien race that invaded the world of Midrath and conquered its inhabitants and stripped the planet of resources. This boss is known as an outcast Ode warrior, who isn't as powerful as the normal Nimrod. For instance, this one doesn't hit as hard as the one from the Collector side quest, however, he does do that jump. So this boss drops the Unsula, Odiak, and Grin, and also drops the rune called Hurlwind, which is for flyblades that increases voltaic damage on activation and also grants an additional defense totem slot. After this, you would need to travel north till you get to this little elevated mountain, and this is where you will see the next boss called the Thrice Bound. This boss is of the Mockery's race of enemy. They usually are seen stalking their surroundings in ethereal form. When approached by a living being, they will possess nearby wooden husks, which they use as a vessel to attack. So they pretty much a spirit of sorts. So this boss drops the armor set called Mockery, so that's the Mockery Binds, Mockery Dothrot, and Mockery Ilk. He also drops the rune called Forburn, which is for shields that increases flame damage on activation and grants an additional attack totem slot. The next boss is also a newer one, which means you would also need to have passed the fable called the Waste Bear in order to see this boss. So this boss called Kabocha and is part of the corrupted Sprout folk. So the corrupted are enemies that have been exposed to the Ode's Icor and have now become corrupted because of that, but there isn't much lore on this as of now. But he drops the armor set of the Arbearer, the Arbearer's Braze, Arbearer's Mask, Arbearer's Pauncher, and the weapon called Marrow's Bane. He also drops the rune called Torch Eternal, which is meant for polearms and increases flame damage on activation and grants an additional attack totem slot. Next is Etheldred The Weaver, who is also one of the corrupted. This boss is more on the difficulty side, so it would be best to do this one in a party. So this boss drops the Vetch and Verdigris weapons, and also the Ember Ot rune for short blades that increases flame damage on activation and grants an additional attack totem slot. So the rest of the bosses, there isn't any lore on them, so we will update that when we get more info on them. So right next to this boss is another one called the Sinecure Errant Gawth, who is of the Ode faction and drops the Grin and Unsula and the Forburn rune, which is for shields that increases flame damage on activation and grants an additional attack totem slot. This boss is fairly easy compared to the rest of the bosses. Then also right next to this boss is the Knell Knight, who is of the Mendicant nature. This boss is also fairly easy compared to the rest, and drops the Blog and Myrtle Shield and Sword, and also the Nettle and the Everflame, which is for long blades, that increases flame damage on activation and grants an additional attack totem slot. And then after this boss, we come to the final one, which is right in the top corner of the map. So this boss, who's called the Gruul Seeker Ruthos, is also of the Ode faction and drops 3 weapons. So it's the Skilter, Grin, and the Blitzel, and also the Alka's Breath rune, which is for bows that increases arcanic damage on activation and grants an additional utility totem slot. So, while some runes share names with bosses, the key details are in each rune's dedicated section. For instance, every boss drops a unique rune variant, so you'll need to defeat them all to collect the complete set. Even runes with identical names are often restricted to specific weapon classes, meaning you should farm every relevant boss if you want options across different classes for each weapon. So yeah, guys, that's the complete boss guide as of Preludes 12. If we do have an update to this system or more bosses, then I'll add it to the description or link you guys to an updated video. So if you found this info at all insightful, hit that like and subscribe button to stay updated on everything Soulframe, and I'll see you in the next one.